grip of a viral addiction. An addiction that has collapsed websites, stripped shop shelves bare, and has the staff of Castle Chocolates in my Carlisle constituency working round the clock to feed. I speak, of course, of Dubai chocolate. Now, will the Leader of the House join me in not just thanking the staff of Castle Chocolates, who are literally working round the clock, but would she give time for a debate on the entrepreneurship of our small businesses and the contribution they make to our cities?
Leader.
Well, absolutely join her in celebrating Dubai chocolates and congratulating those of Castle Chocolates in her constituency for meeting this demand. And I think it shows absolutely the opportunity that social media particularly does bring to small businesses in parts of our constituency. So we should always remember that when we discuss issues around social media, but I'll join her in having a few Dubai chocolates later.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a person of Gujarati heritage and an MP that represents a large number of Gujarati constituents, I too would like to express my shock, horror and sympathies for the devastating news that's coming out of India, and like the rest of the House, pray and hope beyond hope of some good news. Mr. Speaker, recently I have spoken to many nurseries in my constituency who have served their close-knit generation, hard-working generations for generations, including Shanklin Day Nursery, Nursery Rhymes and Saffron Preschool. They all tell me that they are struggling, and one is imminently to be closed due to a combination of rent increases from the council, increases in employees' national insurance, low rate provided by the government for free childcare places, and them no longer being able to charge for additional services. Could the Leader of the House kindly commit to scheduling a debate on how we can improve funding for our vital nurseries?
Leader.
Well, I'll join him in sending all my thoughts and wishes to his constituents who may be worried and affected by the news coming out of India and the inbound flight there to Gatwick. It is truly devastating. This government is committed to more childcare places, more free childcare. That's what we're rolling out. We've got more money going into school-based nurseries as well, so that families can access that issue. I hear what he's saying this morning, and this probably would make a good topic for a debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I start by associating myself with the sympathies given to the news coming from India this morning, which will be causing great anxiety to many of my constituents. Mr. Speaker, the Essential Eagles cheerleading team of Silvertown have just returned triumphant from an important event in Florida. Mr. Speaker, as a sports fan, I know you will know that there are almost 100,000 people taking part in cheerleading now. It's recently been recognised by Sport England, but is often goes unrecognised with the wider public. Does the Leader agree with me we need to do more to shine a light on these grassroots sports that often don't get recognition? And will she start today by congratulating Essential Eagles on the success and showing the Americans what talents the girls and boys of East London have?
Well, he's certainly a great cheerleader for his constituency and for this sport, which has actually been raised with me before, because I think it does provide great opportunities for people to engage with sport, and it showcases what can be done.
Jones.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I declare my interest as the Governor of the Royal Berkshire Hospital. There is a chronic shortfall of staff in radiology and oncology. These shortages mean people find out they have cancer later and treatments are delayed, worsening survival rates. Was the Leader of the House aware that 2,910 more clinical radiologists could be recruited if money spent outsourcing demand was spent within the NHS? And can we have a debate in government time to scrutinise these shortfalls?
Well, look, we have inherited a very difficult situation when it comes to cancer diagnosis and many other diagnoses across our health service. That's why we're boosting, as we did yesterday in the spending review, healthcare spending year on year in the coming years. We will be publishing a dedicated national cancer plan shortly, and that will, of course, include how we can identify and diagnose cancer earlier.
Emma Foodie.
I had the privilege of meeting up with Seton Sluice Defibrillator Group, an amazing group of volunteers who have managed to secure funding for 16 defibrillators in the village and also provide training and servicing for them. So can we have a debate on how we can support groups such as Seton Sluice Defibrillator Group, and will the Leader of the House join me in congratulating and thanking all of the volunteers who support them in this effort?
Leader.
Well, I'll join her in thanking all the volunteers in her constituency for getting all these defibrillators in her constituency, because they can absolutely save lives, and it's really important that we get them into as many communities as possible, and we are committed to improving access to them, and I'm sure as ever they would make a good topic for debate.
Victoria Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Emma from Tring lives with a rare genetic connective tissue disorder as well as comorbid conditions, which means she lives in pain every day, and despite that has worked hard to build a great career in the NHS. Although she understands reform is needed to disability allowance, these changes absolutely terrify her. Simply functioning on a daily basis come at a significant physical and financial cost, and she sees the loss of her PIP, which will lead to her deterioration and loss of her career. Can we have a debate about the impact of these changes to disability allowance, especially for those who are proudly using that to get into work? Thank you.
Leader.
Well, I hear what she says, and many of us have met constituents with fluctuating illnesses like the ones that she describes, and I understand that this is a worrying time for people. We have had the Green Paper. We will shortly be bringing forward a piece of legislation to consider further the eligibility criteria for independence payments, and I'm sure she will want to debate those then.
Jodie Gosling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday I hosted an event of 70 leading experts ahead of World Continence Week. This included campaigners for the Bins for Boys campaign, a campaign to ensure that everybody has the dignity of being able to dispose of items like stoma bags, catheters and pads. One of my guests was Pete Reid, OBE 3-time gold medalist and retired Lieutenant Commander, now patient advocate, who highlighted the fact that we don't have such bins, suitable bins, in our male toilets. Could the Leader of the House please support the campaign to ensure that bins are available for the dignity of our guests?
Well, she raises a really important issue around World Continence Week and the availability of appropriate bins to dispose of things in men's toilets as well as women's toilets, and I'm sure that we can take up those issues in the House.
Final question on this side, Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, can I, on behalf of my party myself, convey our thoughts and prayers for those people involved in the air crash in India. I think it's appropriate that we do so. Leader of the House, I wish to raise the urgent case of prisoner of conscience Junaid Hafiz, a Pakistan lecturer sentenced to death on widely condemned blasphemy charges since 2013. His arrest, his trial has been repeatedly delayed, and he has faced solitary confinement after attacks on prisoners. His first lawyer protecting him was killed and defending freedom of expression in Pakistan. So will the Leader of the House ask the FDCO what representations have been made to the Foreign Secretary has made to Pakistan authorities and international partners to secure his release, ensure a fair trial, push for blasphemy law reform and ensure full religious freedom? Thank you.
Well, once again, can I thank him for raising the issues that he does today. We do, as a government, remain deeply concerned by the use of blasphemy laws to undermine human rights in Pakistan. Those conversations happen continuously between our government and other governments, and the Foreign Secretary is in his place, so I'm sure he's heard his call.
Picture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Indeed, June is a very special month for birthdays, as he will know, celebrating his birthday this week. But I wonder if the Leader of the House will join me in celebrating the 100th birthday of the Doncaster Free Press and recognise the importance of local free press newspapers in our regions.
Yeah. Well, I can confirm it wasn't Mr. Speaker's 100th birthday. He falls well short of that. 21 again, I think you were, Mr. Speaker, weren't you, this week? But absolutely join him in congratulating Doncaster Free Press and the work that all of our local newspapers do in continuing to provide that trusted source of local news that many of our constituents rely on.
MacDonald.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. On Friday last week, a mass brawl broke out outside a primary school in my constituency, with children as young as 4 and their families witnessing violent acts. They're understandably scared. Can the Leader of the House join me in condemning this disgraceful behaviour, commending Cleveland Police and the school for their response, and can she secure a statement from the Justice Secretary to ensure that perpetrators in crimes such as this feel the full force of the law?
Yeah.
Well, I, of course, join him in condemning this awful incident in his constituency and thank his local police and the school for their swift response, and I look forward to justice being served.
Paul Wall.
Mr Speaker, as a proud Lancastrian like myself, you'll be aware that this Friday is Whit Friday and that across the North West we still have a strong tradition of Whit walks and carnivals where brass bands play to our local communities. Some of our fabulous local bands, including Milnrow, Wardle Academy, Wardle Anderson, Littleborough and Bloom Music, will all be performing at the internationally renowned Saddleworth and Oldham Whit Friday band contest. So will the leader join me in blowing out their own trumpet, or more appropriately their cornet, and maybe have a debate in government time on the brilliance of brass bands across the country?
Leader.
Well, he's slightly better at puns than me, maybe, Mr Speaker, but absolutely join him in celebrating Whit walks and can confirm that his constituency does a great turn in that, and join him in trumpeting all of those in his constituency who participate.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This is Carers Week, the 9th to the 15th of June. Carers Week 2025 is focused on caring about equality. Millions of people across the UK provide unpaid care for ill, older or disabled family member, and their support is worth a staggering £184 billion a year to our country. In my Western Bartonshire constituency, Mr Speaker, we are very fortunate to have a wonderful organisation called Carers of Western Bartonshire, who provide outstanding support to unpaid carers and help promote equality of opportunity for carers. Will the Leader of the House join me in recognising their efforts and thank the staff and members of Carers of Western Bartonshire for all they do throughout the year?
Leader.
Well, I'll join him in thanking all of those carers in his constituency and right across this country. The government remains committed to supporting carers. They do a fantastic and wonderful job, but as he says, they also save the state a huge amount of money in the work that they do.
Lillian Jones.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. A well-established local business and employer in my constituency of Kilmarnock and Loudon is facing an ongoing and costly administrative issue with HMRC. They've been trying since January to close an outdated VAT bond, no longer required, despite repeated attempts, including formal letters to 6 HMRC departments. They've received no response. Virgin Money continues to charge fees for this unnecessary bond, placing an unfair financial burden on a company that employs local people and contributes to our local community. Will the Leader of the House agree to a debate in government time on how HMRC can be made more responsive and accountable to small businesses facing bureaucratic deadlock?
Well, this sounds like a particularly frustrating situation for her constituents, and if she gives me the full details of the case, I will make sure that HMRC deals with it quickly.
Luke Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My constituents Peter from Liverton Mines and Morgan from Broughton are very keen to buy electric vehicles, but they're unable to because they don't have driveways on which to charge them. So will the government take it upon themselves to make it easier for people to buy electric vehicles and find solutions for pavement charging?
Well, can I just say, Mr Speaker, I'm aware that this is the Honourable Gentleman's 132nd question to this House since he was elected in July, and that's double what his predecessor asked in his first year, so congratulate him on that. And he raises a very important issue of electric vehicles and the need for us to get access to them.
Stuart.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This week I was delighted to welcome pupils from Doon Academy in Dunwellington to the Parliament. They were able to make the trip due to the community benefit from the local wind farms. A few weeks ago I paid a visit to the school to learn their Kind to Mind group. Students have created a safe place for schools, for students in the school to connect, to talk about how they feel. Would the Leader of the House make time for a debate on what action can be taken to support mental health in our communities, particularly for our young people?
Well, we're absolutely committed to providing mental health support, especially for our young people, and we've got an ambitious programme to do just that, and I'm sure that the Health Minister will keep us updated.
Chris Webb.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This week's been a great week for Rugby League team Billy Boston knighted, but you'll be astonished to find out that only one former boxer has ever been knighted, Sir Henry Cooper. So does the Leader of the House agree with me that more grassroots working class sports stars should be knighted, and maybe Kevin Sinfield and Lennox Lewis would be a good start?
Well, I'm sure that the authorities have heard what he said today, and my honourable friend does a really good job of championing working class sports, particularly boxing and rugby league, and I know they matter greatly to his constituents.
McNally.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. New College Lanarkshire was recently recognised as Further Education Institution of the Year at the Herald Education Awards, and Deputy Principal Anne Baxter and student Chloe Sandilands were also recognised, winning the Lifetime Achievement and Outstanding Contribution categories. Will my right honourable friend join me in congratulating all at the college on this 160th anniversary? And does she agree with me that the Scottish Government must end its unfair cuts to the college sector to allow people to access the skills they need?
Well, absolutely join him in congratulating New College Lanarkshire on all their achievements and their 160th anniversary. He's absolutely right. We have boosted, this UK government has boosted funding to further education, and now the Scottish Government have got the Barnett consequentials of that, and they've really got no excuse not to do so.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The volunteers of the Southwick Village Green Preservation Society have for 6 years worked with pride and love to improve the green in my constituency. Thanks to their efforts, it not only looks beautiful, but it celebrates the proud history of Southwick, including the contributions of Sudakers in shipbuilding and in world wars. Will the Leader of the House join with me in thanking them for what they do and consider a debate on the contribution that voluntary groups like them make?
Certainly join him in congratulating all those involved in improving the Southwick Village Green, and all the volunteers in all our constituency do.
I had an extremely harrowing meeting with a mum in my constituency whose 12-year-old son had been groomed by an AI chatbot through Character AI. It's utterly unacceptable that young people are exposed to the risks and harms of AI in this way. The Online Safety Act is a step in the right direction, but does the Leader agree we must do more, and will she make further space to debate this vital issue in this House?
I was really sorry to hear of this horrific case of a young person in her constituency being groomed by an AI bot, and it highlights further the challenges that we face. She's right, we brought in the Online Safety, or the previous government brought in the Online Safety Act. We need to see how that unfolds, but if we need to strengthen it, we will.
Josh Newbury.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Minor Injuries Unit at Cannock Chase Hospital temporarily closed more than 5 years ago. In August, the Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent ICB announced proposals to permanently close that MIU, but it's been radio silent since October. My constituents are having to use unreliable bus services to travel elsewhere, or call an ambulance, which is the opposite of what the ICB wants to achieve. So would the Leader of the House grant a debate on the importance of urgent care, particularly in more deprived communities like Cannock Chase?
Well, he's absolutely right to highlight the access that his constituents need to urgent and emergency care in his constituency. And I'm sorry to hear of the closure of the Minor Injuries Unit. The Health Minister will be here shortly for a statement. You might want to raise it with them.
John Slinger.
Mr Speaker, will the Leader join me in praising Labour-led Rugby Borough Council and all involved in organising the forthcoming Love Rugby Festival from 20th of June to the 6th of July in our town centre? It brings together rugby's diverse communities and celebrates our amazing people, open spaces, volunteers and venues. Town centre businesses are throwing open their doors, as is the Art Gallery and Museum. And as chair of the APPG for running, I'm glad that the festival includes a Couch to 5K run, which I'll be joining, and I would wonder whether you, Mr Speaker, and perhaps the Leader might join me on the to take the 55-minute train up to Rugby and take part and celebrate pride and place in rugby.
It's not finished, come on.
Well, I always prefer invitations that involve eating things rather than running at things, but I will consider it. We've heard a lot about rugby today, but he raises a different kind of rugby, and I'm sure that many people will be visiting his constituency this week.
Dave Robertson, final question. Quick.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I was contacted this week by a constituent who needs to have her son see an occupational therapist. Her son is 1 year old, but because he doesn't yet have child disability living allowance, can't be given that referral. The Department for Work and Pensions says that the current wait for applications for child disability allowance is 25 weeks. This is just not acceptable. Can the Leader of the House arrange for a statement to be made to this House on the steps that the Department is taking to clear the backlog that it inherited from the omniscient?
Well, he's absolutely right to raise that the delays in applications for disability living allowance, particularly for children, are unprecedented, but they're also unacceptable, and the government is taking action to bring them down, but I will ensure that his case gets thought.
Right, we now come to the statement. Just let the front bench change over. Foreign Secretary David Lammy.
Well, Mr Speaker, my thoughts, and I'm sure those of the entire House, are with those who've been affected by the tragic plane crash in India this morning. We know that British nationals were on board. And, Mr. Speaker, I can confirm that the FCDO is working urgently with local authorities to support British nationals and their families, and has stood up a crisis team in both Delhi and in London. With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will now make a statement on Gibraltar. Yesterday, the United Kingdom reached a political agreement with the European Union on the last major unresolved issue from our decision to leave the European Union. It provides much-needed certainty for people and businesses in Gibraltar, and this deal removes another obstacle to closer ties with our EU friends. And crucially, Mr. Speaker, it protects British sovereignty over the rock. Mr. Speaker, the need for this deal is well understood across the House, as members on both sides have often highlighted the current situation was not sustainable. Every single day, approximately 15,000 people, half of Gibraltar's workforce, cross the land border with Spain. They go to do their jobs, to buy goods and services. Without a solution, the EU's incoming system of entry and exit controls would have introduced a hard border. Every individual passport checked, every British good heading for Gibraltar's supermarket shelves subject to time-consuming custom checks, chaos and backlogs endangering the livelihoods of British citizens in Gibraltar, wrecking the territory's economy and possibly costing hundreds of millions of pounds a year, placing pressure ultimately on the UK taxpayer to pick up the bill. All of my predecessors, Mr. Speaker, since the referendum have had to wrestle with the looming threat for Gibraltar's economy and their way of life. These issues were regrettably left out of the EU exit negotiations. The previous government began further talks to address them in 2021, when the former Right Honourable Member for Esher and Walton was Foreign Secretary. These were taken forward by the Right Honourable Member for Braintree, and the noble Lord Cameron of Chipping Norton came close to reaching an agreement, and I pay tribute to their efforts and to them for briefing me on Privy Council terms when I was in opposition. But coming into office last year, it fell to this government to get a deal over the line. It was imperative that we did so. Gibraltar is part of the British family. Its people are British citizens. Its military facilities are of the utmost importance to Britain's security, protecting important global trade routes in volatile geopolitical times. Britain is safer thanks to the work of our armed forces on the rock. And since coming into office, therefore, we've made it a priority to negotiate a lasting solution with the European Commission and Spain. I want to acknowledge the role of my honourable friend, the Minister for Europe, North America and the Overseas Territory, who from opposition to government has been a relentless advocate for the people of Gibraltar, integral to finding a mutually beneficial way forward. I also thank my honourable friend, the Minister for the Armed Forces, and the dedicated team of Foreign Office diplomats for their efforts led by Lindsay Appleby in Brussels and Robbie Bullock in London, whose negotiating skill and deft diplomacy have been in the finest tradition of our diplomatic service. British ministers and officials have worked hand in glove with the government of Gibraltar to conclude these tricky negotiations. Chief Minister Fabian Picardo has been at the table at every single stage of the process. Yesterday, he welcomed me to Gibraltar before we travelled together to Brussels to conclude the talks. As he said, a united British family. This government would never agree to any solution that didn't have the full support of the government of Gibraltar. Nothing about Gibraltar without Gibraltar. The Chief Minister has said that what we have agreed is something remarkable, something bold, something forward-looking and hopeful. I pay tribute to all of those whose tireless efforts have helped us get here, protecting Gibraltar's sovereignty, economy and way of life for the long term. Since 2021, and with previous governments, there have been 19 formal rounds of talks and countless technical discussions, Sherpa meetings and ministerial calls, a massive collective effort to ensure Gibraltar could continue to prosper. Mr. Speaker, we've agreed a unique and practical solution to the problem facing Gibraltar, the only British overseas territory which shares a border with the European Union visas-free Schengen area, whose people's livelihoods depend on a fluid border. It will deliver jobs, investment and stability, not just for Gibraltar, but for the entire region. British sovereignty over the whole of Gibraltar, including British Gibraltar territorial waters, remains sacrosanct and iron-cast. When I started talks, I immediately got agreement to add a clause explicitly protecting our sovereignty, and the same goes for British Forces Gibraltar, which will continue to operate without interference or interruption, exactly as they do today. The border between Gibraltar and Spain will also be able to flow without checks on people crossing. Residents of Gibraltar and residents of nearby Spanish communities will be able to go about their daily lives as they have done before. For those arriving by air into Gibraltar's airport, there will be a dual border control checks in a model similar to French police operating in London's St Pancras Station. Ignore the fake news, Mr. Speaker. Gibraltar will not be joining Schengen. This was never on the table. Immigration, policing and justice in Gibraltar will remain the responsibilities of Gibraltar's authorities. For products entering Gibraltar across its land border, there will be a unique goods and customs model, avoiding the need for onerous checks at the border. And with this pragmatic solution, flights will be able to operate from Gibraltar Airport to across Europe, driving growth and jobs for the people of Gibraltar. Mr. Speaker, this government is showing that a pragmatic, positive relationship with the European Union pays off for the British public. Just as with the UK-EU summit last month, we are solving the problems left over from the last government and their thin Brexit deal, making working people across British families safer and better off. And we will now also be able to strengthen our cooperation with Spain, our NATO ally, which so many British people know so well. I'm grateful to my counterparts in Spain and the European Union for completing these negotiations in good faith, in the spirit of a win-win solutions for all parties involved. This agreement paves the way for finalisation of the UK-EU treaty text on Gibraltar. All parties have committed to completing this as quickly as possible, and I can reassure honourable members that the House will have the opportunity, of course, to scrutinise it in the usual way. I hope that members on all sides of this House take this with the seriousness that it deserves and back the solution which Gibraltar's Chief Minister and I have come to, guaranteeing Gibraltar's sovereignty, economy and way of life. Mr. Speaker, this is what competent government looks like: fixing problems, not creating them, standing up for our overseas territories, not leaving them exposed, protecting Britain's interest abroad to ensure security and growth at home. With this agreement, Gibraltar will have easier access to the European economy. Their businesses can plan for the long term once again. Their citizens can feel reassured about their future. Britain's commitment to Gibraltar remains as solid as the rock itself. I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Foreign Secretary Dame Priti Patel.
And Mr. Speaker, the thoughts of the whole House will be with those affected by the plane crash in Ahmedabad in Gujarat and the emergency services at the scene. And I'd like to thank the Foreign Secretary for the assurances that he's already spoken of with the assistance that will be given to the families affected, as we know British nationals are involved. Mr. Speaker, on these statements, I want to pay tribute to the Chief Minister of Gibraltar, Fabian Picardo, and his team for the constructive way they have approached this issue. They have worked constructively with ministers in the last Conservative government to set out the negotiating position and red lines, with the UK recognising the choices that Gibraltar decided to make in their interest. The Chief Minister stated in a letter to the former European Scrutiny Committee that the UK and Gibraltar have never worked more closely together in delivering the outcome that the people of Gibraltar want. And as my noble friend, Lord Cameron of Trippin Norton, said when he gave evidence to that committee last year, Fabian Picardo and I joined up the hip, and we will not agree anything that we are not both comfortable with. The Foreign Secretary has acknowledged his predecessor's work and taken time to reflect upon and secure that outcome. Will the Foreign Secretary also acknowledge that this negotiating process has been frustrated by Spain, who, as we know, blocked these issues being resolved through the Brexit negotiations? His Majesty's opposition will judge the deal agreed on, whether it meets the aims and objectives that we outlined in government with Gibraltar, and once we see the full details. Our principles have been that nothing compromises or infringes on the sovereignty and constitutional arrangements of Gibraltar. It is to remain British. That we must be able to operate our base as we have done to safeguard our defence and interest. And the deal must be backed by the government of Gibraltar and its people to support their interests. It must also address the concerns about the actions of Spain to frustrate and prevent the free flow of goods. I've heard what the Foreign Secretary has said in his statement, and in the joint statement from the government of Gibraltar, the UK government and the EU Commission. And I have the following questions for him. Can the Foreign Secretary confirm that when will the House get to see the full details of the deal and the treaty? In a letter to the House of Lords International Agreements Committee, the Minister for the Indo-Pacific commented on the benefits of scrutiny of sharing the initial treaty text in advance of laying formally. So, given the importance of this issue, will the Foreign Secretary make a draft available to the House before signing? And will he commit to make parliamentary time available to debate the treaty? In relation to the red lines that the last government set with the government of Gibraltar, can he confirm if they have been met? Or if during the course of the negotiations and since he took office last year, has there been any divergence from them? Can he give assurances that under this deal we will see a stop to the games that have been played by the Spanish that disrupt the border and the freedoms Gibraltarians should enjoy? While in the EU they cause disruption, so has he received commitments from Spain and the EU that this will never happen again? With in excess of 15,000 people crossing the border every day, it is vital for economic interests that a fluid border, which Gibraltar wants, is in place. And that is why, when we were in government, we respected the choice of Gibraltar to work to achieve this. On the military base, no mention is made of it in the joint statement, but the Foreign Secretary has referenced it. So can he confirm that nothing will be agreed that infringes on our ability to operate the base? And will members of our armed forces be able to access Gibraltar without needing Schengen checks? On the juxtaposed border controls, can he give more details about their practical operation and explain to the House, though, how they will work? And can Spanish officers stop a British citizen coming to stay in Gibraltar? Will British citizens' time staying in Gibraltar count against a 90-day Schengen limit? Finally, the joint statement issued has a list of areas in the agreement which include covering state aid, taxation, the environment, transport, the rights of frontier workers, social security cooperation, and financial mechanisms on training and employment. But there is a lack of detail. When will these details come forward? When will we be able to scrutinise them? Does this put Gibraltar in a customs union with the EU? What does this mean for VAT? And will there be any provisions that will require Gibraltar or the United Kingdom to pass legislation, including to enact any EU law? Conservatives will always defend British sovereignty and the rights of Gibraltar and will continue to scrutinise the details of this deal so that nothing undermines this.
Yeah. Foreign Secretary.
Well, I'm very grateful to the Shadow Foreign Secretary for the tone of her remarks. She's absolutely right to pay tribute to Fabian Picardo, the Chief Minister of Gibraltar, who has been fantastic to work with throughout. And as I said to him, nothing about Gibraltar without Gibraltar, and he has been in the room on every single occasion that these talks have been conducted. And I am grateful, as I said, to previous Foreign Secretaries for the briefing that they were able to give me in office particularly. And can I be clear that on the military base, it will continue to operate as it does today, there will be zero change. It's vital for UK national security. It's protected by this agreement, and that was a red line for us throughout these negotiations. Can I also say, she says, did the arrangement change with a change of government? The red lines that were set out by the Gibraltar government, no, is the answer. The only thing that changed was that I insisted that there was a sovereignty clause, and when the treaty is published, she will see that sovereignty clause. She asked to how quickly we will be able to share the treaty. We hope to do that as quickly as possible. She will recognise there is a lot of technical detail working with lawyers to draft that treaty, and between the European Union and Spain to ensure that the language is aligned in that treaty, but we will work as quickly as we can to get to that point. She asks about the parliamentary scrutiny that you would expect, and can I assure her that we will follow, as is right, the CRAG process, and that Parliament will have its ability to fully scrutinise that treaty, and of course, if Parliament wishes to debate the terms of that treaty, as she would expect. She asks about Schengen. As I said in the statement, this was never on the table. Immigration, policing and justice in Gibraltar will remain the responsibility of the Gibraltar authorities, and can I give her that assurance? She asks about VAT. Can I assure her that Gibraltar will not be applying VAT and will maintain its fiscal sovereignty? She asks about 90 days and the 90-day rules, because there will, in effect now, not be checks at the land border. It is right, of course, for those who are Gibraltar nationals, they come, they stay as long as they want. But for those who are, say, travelling into Gibraltar from Spain, or those who are arriving in Gibraltar at the airport, the 90-day rule will apply across both Gibraltar and Spain. I can confirm that. I recognise that these issues do touch upon the issues that dominated this House and this Parliament following the decision to leave the European Union, which was, of course, a decision that did divide the nation. But this moment, this deal, this arrangement that had Gibraltar in the room is a conclusion to that period, and I'm very grateful for the tone that the official opposition have taken.
Chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Dame Emily Thornbury.
Very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I have to admit that when Brexit happened, I thought that the problem of Gibraltar was going to be so difficult that I really didn't see how we were ever going to get over it. And I have to say that it is a tribute to the flair, to the flexibility, to the fraternity on display on all four sides of these negotiations that the Foreign Secretary has been able to come to this place to announce such a great success. And I congratulate him and his team wholeheartedly. The Foreign Secretary, however, talks about us scrutinising this matter in the usual way under the CRAG process. I have to say, I think it's rubbish, the CRAG process, and I do ask him to look again at it. I mean, in essence, for us to have the right, as opposed to being given it by largesse, to debate and to vote on a treaty, the requirement is that the government lays before Parliament a treaty which this House may resolve not to ratify during a 21-day delay. That's how that's done, frankly, I don't know, because it's never been done. But it is, in theory, could result in a 21-sitting-day delay, many of them. It's not so much ping-pong as continually hoofing the ball up the pitch again and again. The CRAG process is obscure. It is out of date. It is basically the Ponsonby rule, and it is unfit for the 21st century, unfit for this place, and I do ask the Foreign Secretary to look at it again.
Foreign Secretary.
Begin, Madam Deputy Speaker, by congratulating the Right Honourable Lady for becoming a Dame and her trip to Buckingham Palace yesterday, and I hear what she says about the CRAG process. I recognise the importance of this to the House, and so through the usual channels we will do everything we can to ensure that there is the appropriate parliamentary scrutiny and the House can remain united and confident that Gibraltar remains sovereign, that the debase is secure, and that our relationship with both Spain and the EU is appropriately intact.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Helen Maguire.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and our thoughts also go out to all those families involved in the tragic air crash in India today. I thank the Foreign Secretary for the advance sight of his statement. The Conservatives' botched deal with Europe left Gibraltar in a state of limbo for years, and our hope is that this new agreement will work to the genuine benefit of Gibraltarians, leaving no lingering questions over the status of Britain's sovereignty of the territory and our commitment to the self-determination of Gibraltarians. There are a number of vital principles at stake here. To ensure that the detail does effectively secure the future of the Gibraltarian economy, it is vital that Parliament is given the opportunity to scrutinise the details of this agreement and vote on it. So will the Minister commit to bringing the deal before the House for review and outline when MPs can expect to vote on it? It's also vital that the Government provides further clarity on the timeline for implementing this deal. So can the Minister confirm, therefore, whether a provisional date has been agreed for its implementation and whether this timeline provides enough of an opportunity for parliamentarians to provide adequate scrutiny? Another principle is that nothing about Gibraltar should be agreed without Gibraltarians. So can the Minister provide further details on what steps have been taken to consult Gibraltarians, including representatives of business, to ensure that their interests have been front and centre in these negotiations? The Spanish government has itself willing in the past to act unilaterally over Gibraltar and to the detriment of Gibraltarians. So can the Minister outline, therefore, what mechanisms will exist in the deal to ensure compliance and effective dispute resolution in the event of future possible unilateral action, thus giving confidence to Gibraltarians that the deal will be enforceable? And finally, can the Minister confirm the lifespan of the deal and whether it will include an opt-out clause ensuring the ultimate guarantee of Gibraltar's sovereignty?
Foreign Secretary.
Well, I'm very grateful to the Honourable Lady, and she's right that the people of Gibraltar have been in limbo since the Brexit decision, which is why it was important that in coming into office and inheriting this from the government that we put every effort into it. And let me again pay tribute to the Minister for Europe, Doughty, who rolled up his sleeves and sherpered a lot of those meetings over the last year particularly. She asked about business. Can I assure her that I was with the business representatives from the business sector in Gibraltar yesterday morning, discussing what a deal would mean for them if we got that deal later on in the afternoon. And there was one word that they kept coming back to: certainty. They wanted certainty, and they wanted the opportunity of a more frictionless border arrangement with Spain, and obviously the opportunity to sell in to the Spanish market uninhibited. That's what they said to her, and that's what we took on board particularly. She asked quite rightly about any ability to thwart this deal that might exist in parts of the Spanish parliamentary system. Can I just remind her that this deal appropriately is between the United Kingdom and the European Union, that we have always been a country that meets our treaty obligations seriously, that whatever one's views about the European Union, they're also an organisation that meets its obligations seriously. When you sign up to a treaty, that is what you are doing. As with the TCA, there is a review mechanism that would allow the appropriate review, and indeed the UK-EU summit that we had a few weeks ago was, if you like, an appropriate review. But our obligations under the TCA, we met in opposition, standing up to the agreement that had been struck by the last government, and we would expect the same in this instance.
Phil Brickell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Deputy Speaker, and may I congratulate the Foreign Secretary and Chief Minister Fabian Picardo for getting this landmark agreement over the line. This agreement further cements Gibraltar's place as an integral part of the British family. So can the Foreign Secretary confirm to the House today what further measures he is taking to strengthen relationships with the overseas territories?
Well, I'm glad that the honourable gentleman mentioned the overseas territories more generally. We had a good meeting of the heads of the overseas territories at the end of last year, in which I and the Prime Minister were in attendance. We have undertook to do a review of our relationships to strengthen our relationship further, and the Minister for Europe and the overseas territory is taking that forward as we speak.
Sir James Cleverly.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The right honourable gentleman will know, and he won't take this personally, that for the most part I think his government's ability to negotiate is appalling. And the only reason I have any confidence that this might be a good deal is because the government of Gibraltar were heavily involved. At some point in the future, this House, me included, will see the detail of this agreement, and I will know what red lines I stuck to when I was negotiating. So to save time and for the education of the House, could he, without going into details, just let us know, did the European, including Spanish positions, move closer to ours, or did we move closer to theirs in order to get this deal over the line?
Well, can I say to the right honourable gentleman that we strengthened this deal. And we strengthened this deal by putting in a sovereignty clause to ensure that there was no question about the sovereignty of Gibraltar and its relationship, its unique relationship as part of the family of the UK and the United Kingdom. And let me say too that we were able to reach a deal yesterday that the European Union and the UK had negotiated. And of course, we were ensuring that Fabian Picardo was in the room at every meeting. And of course, the European Union was ensuring that Spain was in the room at every meeting. And he will know that Gibraltar has been a block on our bilateral relationship with Spain. And this now is an opportunity for us to work with Spain and deepen that relationship, as we've been able to do with so many other countries across Europe.
Lizzie College.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I actually used to live in Andalusia, close to the Gibraltar border, so this is very close to my heart, and I really congratulate the Foreign Secretary on this deal. The people of Spain, Gibraltar and Britain are very close. We have very deep links, and as they say in Spain, hacemos buenas amigas. So would the Foreign Secretary agree with me that this not only is a great deal for the economy of Gibraltar, but this is also a chance to deepen those relationships and continue those friendships that have gone on for so many years?
Well, I'm very grateful to my honourable friend because it gives me an opportunity just to remind people also about the many Spanish families living across the border, Spanish families that make their way into Gibraltar for work, to see loved ones, who were subjected to checks. And now those families won't have those checks. It will be much more seamless between both sides. And this absolutely is a win-win for them as much as it is for those in Gibraltar. And I'm very grateful for her bringing to mind the people, not just the businesses, who will benefit.
Sir Julian Lewis.
It's encouraging that the Gibraltarians are receiving more in the way of consideration than the exiled Chagosians did. But when the Foreign Secretary says that a sovereignty clause was inserted, does this mean that Spain absolutely and explicitly recognises the sovereign relationship between Britain and Gibraltar? And if so, what has the reaction been of those elements that he referred to in Spanish politics that do not accept that relationship?
Well, absolutely. Spain do recognise the sovereignty of Gibraltar and its relationship with the United Kingdom in that agreement, and he will see that detail in the treaty, and he will know that the subject of dispute over many, many years, long before many of us were in this house, is really over the isthmus, where actually much of that territory that some would describe as neutral, others have different descriptions, exists between Gibraltar and Spain. Overwhelmingly, I think that there's been support for reaching this moment on both sides. I can't comment on the extremities of politics in Spain, but I'm sure these days you can look that up on social media.
Emma Foodie.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My honourable friend, the member for Portsmouth North, is also the chair of the APPG for Gibraltar, and I know that she is really disappointed not to be able to join us today and would really want to be here to welcome today's UK-Gibraltar-Spain-EU agreement. It protects Gibraltar's sovereignty, it secures the British naval base and reduces border checks from 10 million to 250,000 a year, as well as strengthening the economy through new European flight access. This is an incredibly strong outcome. Can the Foreign Secretary please confirm how we will ensure smooth and effective implementation of it on the ground?
Well, can I too pay tribute to the work of my honourable friend, the member for Portsmouth North, for championing the people of Gibraltar and their issues, and ensuring that in coming into government, we made sure that there could not be an agreement that Gibraltar's representatives were not content with. And I should actually update the House that yesterday I also met with the opposition in Gibraltar as well, so that they were fully informed of what I hoped would become a good outcome later on today. And can I say to her that we will work at pace on this treaty. I can't give her a timeline because of the technical legal detail that will involve, but I will seek to update the House if there are delays in the appropriate way.
Dame Harriet Baldwin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I thank the Foreign Secretary for the tone and the tributes that he paid to his predecessors, but also to the officials and diplomats who have been involved in these negotiations for many years. I don't think I heard an answer to the Shadow Foreign Secretary's question, which was, can a British citizen flying from the UK to Gibraltar now be stopped by a Spanish official as they land? And can he clarify with the sovereignty clause, does that mean that Spain has abandoned its claim altogether, or does it plan to follow the same route that Mauritius did with Diego Garcia?
Well, let me just say to the Right Honourable Lady on the first point, we have stuck to the political framework that was negotiated and agreed back in 2020 by the then Foreign Secretary, the former member for Isha. And I've got a photograph of that agreement that was struck and where we would be locating effectively a joint facility in the airport. And there will be a second line queue, as there is in St Pancras, and there will be a Spanish border guards and police situated in that second line. And of course, if there was an alert, then at that point, not on their own, but at that point, there would be a hand-back facility with the Gibraltar police. So they're working alongside those Spanish team. And if there were alert, then the individual would have right to legal advice. They would either be able to return to their country of origin, let's say the UK, or they would be able to voluntarily go over to Spain to face the questions that they're facing. The key thing there is joint and alongside the work and efforts of the Gibraltar Police and the Gibraltar Customs and Border Guards.
Joe Powell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I strongly welcome this political agreement and congratulate the Foreign Secretary and the ministerial team for achieving it. I recently met with Chief Minister Picardo alongside my honourable friend for Bolton West and the Right Honourable Member for Sutton Coldfield and other members of the All-Parliamentary Group on anti-corruption to welcome the progress Gibraltar has made on anti-money laundering, including publicly accessible registers of beneficial ownership. Can the Foreign Secretary confirm that it is the intent in the future EU-UK agreement that there will be a section on anti-money laundering? And does he agree with me that it sends a message to other overseas territories that tackling economic crime can be a strength in terms of business, confidence and investment and not something to be feared?
Well, I'm very grateful to my honourable friend's work in this area. He will recognise that Gibraltar as an overseas territory is at the strong end of tackling issues of illicit finance and pave the way. There's more work to do on this issue and on the issue of beneficial ownership particularly. And I intend to take this forward. I hope, well, not I hope, working alongside our new envoy in this area, Baroness Hodge, and culminating, I hope, in an event in London next year.
Sir Ashley Fox.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Gibraltar is British and its citizens are British by choice. And I was proud to represent Gibraltar for 10 years when I served in the European Parliament. Can the Minister confirm that once the full text is available, he will have time for both this House and the Gibraltar Parliament to scrutinise this deal before it is ratified?
I don't want to speak for the Chief Minister, but I know that he was expecting for there to be the appropriate scrutiny in the Gibraltar parliamentary system of the bill. And of course, as you would expect, this has garnered a lot of attention in Gibraltar. And I've given my undertaking to the Chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. I recognise that this is an important last aspect of our decision to leave the European Union and does need the appropriate parliamentary scrutiny.
Sean Woodcock.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm grateful to my honourable friend for his statement. Is he able to confirm that it is his expectation that this will provide new opportunities for growth in trade and for businesses on Gibraltar?
Well, I'm very grateful to the honourable gentleman. I can confirm that. There was palpable excitement speaking to businesses in Gibraltar yesterday morning at the opportunities that would arise. Of course, for small and medium-sized businesses, there will be some change. So it's also important, and we've discussed this with the Chief Minister, that we're able to support those businesses on trade, on skills particularly, and opportunities that exist on both sides of the border.
Richard Tice.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Just to probe this question of whether or not Spanish border officials, Foreign Secretary, have an effective veto on the entry of a British citizen from the United Kingdom landing on British sovereign territory in Gibraltar. I just want absolute clarity for everybody, please, in this House. Do Spanish officials have a veto or not? And secondly, could he comment on the dispute resolution mechanism and whether or not there is a regular review clause?
Okay. Well, can I say to the honourable gentleman that if he flew into Gibraltar Airport, and there was, and I don't know if he has flown in as I have, and there was an alert. I'm not sure why there might be an alert in the Schengen system, but if there were an alert in the Schengen system, can I reassure him that as he is stopped by the Spanish border guards operating on behalf of the European Union, that he would be handed back to the Gibraltars, where he might feel more comfortable. He would be able to access his rights and the legal system that he certainly feels comfortable with, which is ours, and he would be able to return to the United Kingdom, where no doubt the Spanish would seek to extradite him, and many in this House would be rather pleased.
Greg Smith. Oh, Greg Smith, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The sovereignty question can only really be answered, notwithstanding the Foreign Secretary's commitment to the sovereignty clause, once we have the full detail of the treaty. And I think that scrutiny is made poorer by the government's decision to abolish the European Scrutiny Committee when they took office, that had been doing detailed work in the last Parliament on this subject. But if I can tease that question a little bit further with him, can he give the House an assurance, given the unique nature of Gibraltar Airport, with the runway and aerodrome owned by the Ministry of Defence and operated by the Royal Air Force, will a member of the British Armed Forces landing in Gibraltar have to prove their British identity to anyone in order to go to work?
No, absolutely not. We have secured that, and he will recognise that Spain is a NATO ally and understood the importance of that requirement. And can I just, Madam Deputy Speaker, because it has been raised, yes, there is a dispute resolution mechanism and determination clause, as you would appropriately expect.
Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is a welcome agreement which has been a long time coming. Those of us who've had the privilege of visiting Gibraltar on official delegations are aware of how loyal to Britain and the British Crown Gibraltarians are. When we talk of sovereignty, I think we've established that the police, other than the St Pancras-style operation, will have no authority. But could the Foreign Secretary just confirm that no other Spanish authority, customs officials, for example, will have any authority within on the rock?
Well, I can say to the right honourable gentleman that yesterday I met with the long-standing Member of Parliament, Joe Bolsonaro, at 85, and he shared his reflections on Gibraltar, its attachment to the UK, and of course the war and being evacuated to London. He reflected on, and where there have been disagreements with the UK, where the UK has not understood that they are part of the family. And can I give him the assurance that he seeks? Yes, is the answer.
Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's clearly in the best interests of both Spain and Gibraltar that there's a free flow of individuals going backwards, of course, across the border. Could you just clarify one issue, though? And that's for UK citizens who might fly into Spain, hire a car, and then want to go into Gibraltar. What checks will there be at that border? And indeed, those citizens that fly into Gibraltar and then hire a car and then go into Spain, whether there'll be any checks on the border at that point. Because I think this is a point of clarity which will help.
Well, I'm grateful to the Honourable Gentleman for that question. The clarity is that there won't be any checks anymore. You will be flying into, if you flew to Spain into a Schengen area, if you flew into Malaga, you will be free to drive to Gibraltar without that checks. You would have already had those checks, and that works the other way as well.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Secretary of State first of all for his statement, but I have to ask this question because the similarities between Gibraltar and Northern Ireland are similar. As a nation who has had sovereignty issues in terms of European overreach in borders, Northern Irish people will feel the anxiety of this agreement. So can the Secretary of State outline what consideration has been given to the views of Gibraltarians and what consultation was held regarding the policy of a foreign nation on their soil?
Well, can I reassure the right honourable gentleman that our position of nothing about Gibraltar without Gibraltar gave those guarantees, and there were no meetings held, certainly under this government, but I'm quite sure it was under the last government as well, without the Chief Minister in the room, so that they were happy. And we would not have had a deal were they not happy. There would not have been a deal with the Chief Minister not able to stand up and say, I'm happy with this deal. That was the guarantee we gave them. And of course, we reflected on the issues that arose in relation to Northern Ireland.
Can I thank the Foreign Secretary for his statement this morning, and I will just allow a moment for the two front benches to swap over. Which brings us to statement on the spending review, health and social care. Minister of State Karen Smith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And with permission, I would like to make a statement on the outcome of the spending review for the Department of Health and Social Care. This government was elected on a manifesto to fix our broken NHS and make it fit for the future. And our job is twofold. First, to get the NHS back on its feet and treating patients on time again, and second, to reform the service for the long term so it is fit for the future. That's why, in her autumn budget, my right honourable friend the Chancellor took the necessary decisions to give health and social care a record uplift in day-to-day spending at the conclusion of the first phase of the spending review. The Department of Health and Social Care received a cash injection of £26 billion, covering day-to-day spending and capital investment in 25-26 compared to the 23-24 outturn. All the parties opposite have rejected that investment, rejected the changes to repair the damage done to our NHS and move it forward. So let's check what they've rejected. They have rejected to deliver 2 inflation pay increases for our NHS staff, recruiting 1,700 more GPs and agree a GP contract for the first time since the pandemic, the biggest investment in hospices in a generation, the biggest expansion of carers' allowance since the 1970s.